This computer. Hello, good evening, and welcome everybody. As you know, I'm Dan Winter of fractalu.com, fractalfield.com. This is our third in this series, fractalu.com courses. This evening we have Tufan Guven, who is going to teach us about, as I called it, a gentler intro to fractal field physics. Actually, Tufan has been a wonderful resource in teaching in a way that I'm often not patient enough to do myself, plus maybe more systematic and younger.
Thank you, Dan. I'm always happy to collaborate.
Also, Tufan has become a pioneer in distributing the learning tools. So it's geometricmodels.org, right, Tufan?
That's right.
So the geometric models, he's really taken the effort to make available the learning tools, my book, and we also have him now shipping the Star Mother kits. He has better access to shipping less expensively, both from there and in the US. And he's ambitiously put together the 7-color donuts and the vector flexor. And he's done a lot of work to make these tools available. And this is a wonderful networking as well. Tufan is also helping as a kind of a moderator here at fractalu.com, and is also going to help us moderate what has just effectively been launched this week, our Discord conversation group, which is up and running at fractalu.com. Just click on Discord and it's started to become a little bit fun even.
Yeah,
and
all those links are available at fractalu.com.
Right. And I'm rather happy to say that last week's course with Iris, teaching, how you teach young people to see without their eyes, to go into that trance bliss state, that film is already nearing 4,000 views and was super well received, and lots of people are enthused and excited, and actually we're having a certain amount of fun here. So without further ado, now Tufan has prepared what appears to be an excellent slideshow for us this evening, but also to keep this conversational, what we're going to do is every 20, 30 minutes or whenever Tufan thinks it's fun, we'll kind of take a break and take a few questions. And also, as we mentioned, if you please do put your questions in the chat window, but if you would prefer to speak your question rather than have me read it for you, just put with mic in there and we'll try to make that happen. We'll see. It's nice to have a little, discussion, dialogue, fun stuff, as it were. But I think without further ado, we should start, Tufan, and then we'll play with the questions as we roll. Is that good for you?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah. So take it over, Tufan.
Thank you. Thank you. It's always a great pleasure to be part of fractalu.com program. So I'm sharing my screen now. And okay. So tonight we are going to talk about some basic definitions like phase conjugation, fractal charge collapse, implosion, constructive wave interference, perfect embedding, and so on. And we'll try to make those concepts a little easier for the beginners to understand, hopefully. So as a start, I would like to establish a foundation by starting from the philosophical understanding and merge it with the modern scientific method. Pythagoras, the father of mathematics, argued that there was a mathematical and geometrical harmony in the cosmos, or in the universe. And his followers linked the 4 arts of astronomy, mathematics, geometry, and music into one area of study to form the disciplines of the medieval quadrivium. So we understand that the knowledge of geometry among the other disciplines of the quadrivium was essential to establish a foundation and to understand the function of this reality. This is why throughout the fractalu.com program, we want to focus on the mechanics of waves to better understand what sacred geometry is, to create a foundation.
The quadrivium essentially referred to combining disciplines, science, philosophy, theology, and putting it together, I think.
Right. And there's this famous quote that is attributed to Pythagoras. He says, there is geometry in the humming of the strings, and there is music in the spacing of the spheres.
That's nice.
And I perceive this quote as a reminder that the universe is bound with a specific set of principles. Not only understanding those principles, but also integrating them to one's life are key to enlightenment, I would suggest. And this subject also brings us to the laws of the universe. Because there are some things that we can change in life, and there are some things that we cannot. So if we can understand the things that we cannot change, so to speak, the laws of the universe, if we can understand those codes of this matrix, of this dimension, then we can better understand this reality and put our thoughts and feelings in a discipline. Because we can change our reality to a certain extent through our thoughts and feelings and emotions and intentions, I believe. And like Bruce Lipton and Joe Dispenza, they go into great detail about controlling our thoughts and feelings and how they affect our reality, our consciousness, our perception. So I would very much suggest everyone to check Bruce Lipton and Joe Dispenza as well on that. So this is why I consider the laws of the universe very important to give meaning to this life and to understand sacred geometry as well. Now, every esoteric and mystic tradition have their perspective, have their view on the laws of the universe. I like giving example from the Hermetic perspective. And we can go over the 7 natural laws of the universe. I find this quite instructive, quite important, because even though all of these laws, they seem to be apart from each other, actually they are all entangled, they are all connected. They have specific commonalities, like they have self-similarity, they have fractality, they have nuances like the importance of frequency, the sine wave, waves. So let's very simply go over them. First one is the mind. Now, all is mind and everything is energy. The universe is mental. And here we can sense the feeling of a reflection. If the universe is mental, there is a suggestion that we create the universe in our mind. So there is this reflection, there is this self-similarity, fractality here. Let's look at the second one, correspondence. As above, so below, reflecting congruent qualities. Again, there is this feeling of fractality here, self-similarity. Vibration. Nothing is stationary and everything vibrates. This is about frequencies. Everything is frequency. That's why we have to understand the science of frequencies, mechanism of waves. Polarity. Everything is double and everything has its opposite, thus extremes meet. Rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. It's like the great cycles of time. Again, there is a sense of frequency here. Vibration. Cause and effect. Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Gender. Gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and the feminine principles. That's why I suggest everyone to pay importance to the natural laws of the universe and try to understand it to have a better foundation about sacred geometry. Now, we cannot cover all of these things in this presentation, but I just wanted to give you a sense about those things. And I would like to continue with the meaning of fractality and explain what fractality is.
Maybe just one little quick comment too about mind is everything. That, you know, most physicists would agree that atoms are made of literally a vortex wormhole. So it's literally a plasma vortex that is what's called an atom. But now on a macro scale, we're understanding that mind in the brain is literally also simply a larger plasma vortex. So that's a very physical idea of that fractality, and that all is mind. All is a plasma vortex, literally.
Right. So a fractal is a geometrical mathematical set that exhibits a repeating pattern displayed at every scale. And there are two special qualities of fractals. One is self-similarity, and the second one is repetition. Now, when you look at the pictures here, there are beautiful pictures from the nature, and you can see that all those patterns have this commonality of self-similarity and repetition. So they are not 100% identical, but they are similar to each other, and they repeat themselves. That's what fractality is. The fractality actually dominates this reality that we experience at all levels, from matter to energy, from psychology to consciousness. We will go over these details now.
So the flow pattern repeats from the inside to the outside.
Yes. And well, fractality basically is omnipresent in the universe, but it was popularized recently by the end of 70s by Benoit Mandelbrot, the Polish mathematician. While he was working at IBM, they asked him to fix or find a solution to one of their problems, which was an error in their internal communication lines. So they asked him to check it and find a solution for it. And once he started analyzing that, he noticed that the error that he observed was repeating itself as he zoomed in to the error. It was like this repeating pattern over and over again at smaller scales. And then he formalized this mathematically, and it became quite popularized by the end of 70s and 80s. They started printing those fractal patterns on the t-shirts and their hats and everywhere.
It's just funny that when I was a systems analyst with IBM in the 80s, my job was fixing problems with the communication lines.
Wow, that's interesting. That's a self-similar reflection right there. I didn't know that. And this specific internal communication lines error that he found looked like something like the counter set on the top you see. So the pattern was doubling itself as far as I know. And as you zoomed in, the doubling just continued recursively. And there are other examples of fractal formulas, fractal sets, like Hilbert curve is another one. There's the Sierpinski fractal triangle that you can see. There's the co-star. There are so many of them, just to give you a few examples here. And this is the famous Mandelbrot set. After Benoit Mandelbrot formalized the formula with the fractal systems, he generated computer animation simulations. And as you zoom in to each one of those details in the pictures, you will get different fractal patterns. If you write Mandelbrot set on YouTube, you will have beautiful examples. Now, I'm not using any video displays here because sometimes the Zoom doesn't support well the videos, but you can check them on YouTube. Just search for Mandelbrot set.
And notably, the major bifurcation points in that Mandelbrot classic is, in fact, golden ratio cubed between the major lines across, actually.
Right. Now, The difference of fractal systems in mathematics or in computer simulation and nature is, with the computer simulation, you can create the exact same fractal systems, like it can repeat itself identically. But in nature, the nature is it does create self-similar patterns, but they are never 100% the same, but they look like each other. On the right side, if you notice the branch of the tree, you will notice that there is this self-similarity, but it's not 100% similar. It's not 100% same. But if you look on the left side, the computer simulations, you will see that it is exactly the same. So there's this difference between computer simulations and real life. And the broccoli is one of the examples that I love the most, because you can see this vortex geometry on the broccoli, and the same vortex shape keeps repeating itself on the surface. You can see this is the second scale, and even on this one there are smaller scales. These vortices keep repeating themselves at all scales.
It's beautiful.
There are endless examples in nature that we can observe fractality at. Just showing you a few of them here. And we can see them in the mountains, the rivers. You can see there's this main channel here that is divided into smaller and smaller scales. Human body has it everywhere. These are the lymphatic systems starting from the left, blood circulation, the lungs, and the neurons. You can see all fractal patterns. These are also called dendritic patterns as well. And ancient cultures, they loved bringing this understanding to the temples, as the universe is comprised of fractal systems. So why not create the temples like that? And you can see this main geometry here that keeps repeating itself in smaller scales, making up a beautiful temple. This is the Khajuraho temple in India. When we see those in settlements in Africa specifically, this one is from Cameroon. We see this fractal settlement. Another one.
The fractality in African architecture is featured at goldenmean.info/architecture. And this is a good time to say that as you see fractality everywhere in nature, you got to begin to ask yourself, well, what is the actual physics reason why? And it obviously has to do with compression. So, and you know, we used to think it just meant beauty, but now we're getting closer and closer to some pretty solid physics.
Right. This one is from Cameroon.
Cameroon, that's nice.
There's another one from Baila. And you can see this main geometry here that keeps repeating itself in smaller and smaller scales. Then Victor also.
They said that was
a lot. Go ahead, Dan.
The shaman's tent, the shaman's hut, was in the center, and it was a fractal of the whole village. And then his altar was a fractal of the fractal of fractal. So it was literally building fractality into the electrical nature of the village.
And John Aglash has studied this. He gave his decades there, and you can just check his YouTube videos and see more details about the fractal.
Beautiful lecture, Ron Eglash, Fractality in African Architecture. It's a classic. We also have it on the website. It's wonderful.
Right. And we see fractal patterns in Islamic geometric patterns. The evolution of Islamic geometric patterns are summarized here by the University of Technology in Malaysia. And you can see the 6-pointed geometry, 8-pointed, 10-pointed decagons, all reflected in the Islamic geometric patterns. Now, this is a development of the geometrical patterns starting from the top. So I'll try to zoom in to this part to show you the timeline here.
It's really worth mentioning that when Tufan and I originally agreed to work together, it's because we knew that Tufan was deeply involved in the sacred geometry and Islamic architecture. And we were, of course, representing the West. And we saw that this was an opportunity for peacemaking, to see the universal science behind Eastern and Western. And so Tufan is that bridge, hopefully.
There you go. So the top 3 geometries are basically the ones that came out through the Abbasi Caliphate, who started after 750 AD. And you can see that the first set of geometries are more like square and octagonal geometries, and then they went through the hexagonal geometries. And during the Selçuk period, after 1050, those geometries became more complex in mathematics. And I see this as the reflection of the evolution of consciousness on Earth as well. So as the consciousness develops, the geometrical understanding also developed. And we can see these beautiful patterns. And the last 3 lines are related with the Ottoman period. They became more and more complex geometries. And I would like to give an example from the first one only. We don't have time to go over each one, but this first set of geometries were found in the Great Mosque of Kairouan in Tunisia. You can see these geometries on the walls here. And the examples of geometric arrangements are just endless in Islamic architecture. It was forbidden to draw or personalize figures on the walls in the esoteric understanding of, or the mystic understanding of Islam. So they never painted or put personality figures in their temples, but instead they put the geometric fractal patterns to reflect the universe. So this belonged to, as I said, a more esoteric understanding of Islam or Sufism. And some examples from mosques. This one is a very famous one from Nasir al-Mulk Mosque from Iran.
Gorgeous.
And some other tilings from Uzbekistan. We can see the fractal patterns on the walls. And this sense of fractality was touched upon many esoteric and mystic traditions, as said, and one of them is Sufism. In Sufism, there is a concept of the unity of being, which encourages people to look for God inside oneself and perceive the whole universe, including oneself, as the reflection of God. This is what we went over in the beginning, the reflection, the self-similarity, the fractality concept. According to this philosophy, the universe on the micro level is a holographic model whose source is the energy, just like the neurons in the brain. On a cosmic scale, from the fractal and holographic universe perspective, this means that each part of the world contains the whole of the universe as it's hidden inside each part. And in Sufism, the divine secret is the realization of the unity of the God, human, the universe. The creator and the creation and everything is actually one. It has no beginning and no end. The whole universe and the human being is God's representation in different forms. And the universe and the human being is a perception that reflects God's similarity. And Rumi says, the purpose of the mind is to see the divine essence and to reach his unity. And Yunus Emre says, knowledge means to know yourself. So these are great examples from fractal, self-similar, self-embedding examples.
It's so beautiful.
Understandings.
My introduction to spiritual path at the Gurdjieff School was actually the Sufis. and just to say in a word, the reason fractality in the architecture on the temple walls was correct was because enabling charge compression is literally what makes space sacred. So ability to compress electrically is what makes the sacred electrical space in the temple. So picture of fractality on the walls is so appropriate.
Right, very nice. Also an example from other esoteric traditions. In Hermetism, in Emerald Tablet, it says, that which is below corresponds to that which is above, and that which is above corresponds to that which is below to accomplish the miracles of the one thing. It's saying over and over the same thing, fractality and self-similarity, the infinite connection of the mind and the universe.
And later when we get to Hermes caduceus, that being apparently phase conjugation, it all fits together.
Right. Now we see self-similarity between the neurons of the brain and the superclusters. As you can see on the left side, we see the picture of the neurons, a simulation of the neurons, and on the right side, superclusters are. Superclusters are clusters of galaxies, and you can see that they are all connected through plasma filaments. They are like the bloodstream of the universe, and they very much look like each other. And there's a study done in Brandeis University. On the left, there's a picture of the neural connections of a mice, and on the right side, there's the computer simulation of the universe. As we went over in the last picture, it's the connection of the superclusters, and we see this great fractal attributions. And as a result of this study, they have noticed great similarities, and this was done by multiple different study groups. They all came to the same conclusion that it is greatly similar to each other.
Like a neuron, it's pretty easy to believe the universe is mindful.
Right. And then we ask ourselves, is the universe part of a larger mind? This is what basically esoteric and mystic traditions were touching upon. Now, a research paper published in the Journal of Neuroquantology proposes a fractal and holographic model of understanding the connection of consciousness at all levels, from micro to macro, from the cellular level or even the quantum level, starting from the most fundamental scales to star systems, galaxies, and even the universe. Now, this is also called scale invariance, where fractal and holographic systems in this case, are perfectly embedded one another, independent from their scales, what scale invariance means. Also, a definition for perfect embedding for entanglement.
It's interesting that Dirk Meyer there has been communicating the last few days, chatting about the Planck equation, so he's interested.
And the study connects this intricate relationship of consciousness among the universe with the torus form.
And that's the idea that if the Planck equation is right from my equation, and that's the solution to charge collapse, that's the connection, both gravity and mind, consciousness, perfecting charge collapse.
When we look at the twistor geometry, this is called a twistor, toroidal fields recursively generate themselves, going in and out.
Turning inside out recursively, just like the heart.
Yes. Another example from the quantum field. Now, the researchers identified a fractal-like pattern within the texture of the material's magnetic domains. Now, the specific material is neodymium nickel oxide. It's a rare earth nickelate that can act paradoxically as both an electrical conductor and insulator depending on its temperature.
The neodymium magnets have the benefit of being ceramic, high dielectric, and supermagnetic.
Yeah. So again, we see fractality in all aspects of reality. And New Scientist magazine asks or suggests whether our universe is fractal. Actually, it is. And the computer simulation sector just utilizes this extensively. They create games from fractal formulas. This is another famous one, Minecraft. Now, this is very easy to see those pixelations, fractal pixelations. And there was a new game. This is not new. This is maybe 5 or 6 years old. No Man's Sky, that utilized the fractal understanding at its deepest. So what it did was they created 18 quadrillion planets in one game. Well, normally this would be impossible to, create, but what they did was they used fractal mathematics and fractal formulas. So what they most probably did, I believe, is that they just created the code or formula of, let's say, one planet, and they said, okay, the second planet in the star system should have like the variables of the second planet would be multiplied by, let's say, 1.1 or 1.2, let's say. So they create the second planet. And then they said the third planet should be, the variables of the third planet should be multiplied by 1.25 or 1.3 or 1.6, whichever. So like that, they would create a whole solar system or a star system. And then they would say, okay, the following star systems specific variables should be multiplied by, let's say, 1.1, 1.2, and they would get, boom, another star system. And then they would create galaxies, they would create clusters and everything. So this is how they create 18 quadrillion planets by just simple fractal formula. And this brings us to the famous formula from Dan Winter. Golden ratio perfected fractal phase conjugation is the fundamental formula of this universe, as we have seen the fractal examples. Also means the electric origin, cause and mechanism of all centripetal and self-organizing forces, including and especially gravity, life force, perception, bliss, enlightenment, alphabet, symbol, and color. So this formula is very important, golden ratio perfected fractal phase conjugation, and we have covered the fractal part of it until now. And we are going to study the golden ratio part of it, and then we will see the phase conjugation part of it to better understand and digest this understanding. Then if you would like to take some questions, I think it's the right time.
Well, good. Yes. Yeah, I think it's fun to just bounce back and forth and have some dialogue here. Well, let me see, just play with the questions that are closest here. So last question first. No, the Hermetic 7 is an ancient knowledge. The Hermetic 7 we think is related to the 7 arrows of the 7 spin axes of tetracube, which is why the heart has 7 layers of muscle specifically, because that's how you embed and cubically implode. And that's also the cubic nature of phase conjugation and optics. It seems that fractality is basically a manifestation of the law of correspondence. Yes, in the sense of as above, so below is another name for fractality, just like I am that I am. Let's see, let's go up this list of questions. Oh, so there's mention here, there's quite a few questions on the questions page of Discord. We should get in there and play with that. It's been a while. We haven't been there with. Next one, Eric says, not sure about charge collapse. Are their charges in protons, micros, water that is positive and negative charge? Does the equivalent of electrons and protons accelerate down the pine cone and meet at the implosion point? So
We'll
what
talk about it.
Yes. Oh, and so good. So Tufan has some slides about that. In short, we believe the concept of plus and minus charge is equivalent to, in a universally hydrodynamic, everything is a superfluid view of the universe, and that superfluid is charge, and that centripetal versus centrifugal charge is functionally equivalent to yin and yang and plus and minus charge. Let's see. I have a question. I follow Elena Denon. Wonder if I'm familiar with, well, let's do the Elena Denon thing later. And we talked about the Rodin coil. Let's see, what other questions have we missed here? If only if you can recognize the universe is within your mind, then sure. See, that's the thing. When we're saying the universe is within our mind, what we're actually saying is we're made of the same stuff, of superfluid made of charge. And so atoms are a tiny little tornado, and our mind is literally a bigger plasma vortex tornado, and the universe is a bigger one yet. And if you do embedding well, you start by bending little tornadoes and you end up bending bigger ones. It's pretty simple, actually. So how we do? Yes, you are the live energy life force. How are gravity and fractal hearts love connect? Ah, yes. This is an opportunity for the Sufi quote, only love bends the light, therefore only love creates, which essentially means, the centripetal implosive force that empathy creates within your heart. I feel you outside as if you're inside of me. And the heart's origin of its electricity is literally implosion in a vortex. That's why your heart beats. It's called When Time Breaks Down, Origins of Cardiac Arrhythmia by Arthur T. Winfrey. So if you make a map of where the voltage of the heart beats comes from, it's literally an implosive nest of donuts electrically. Why when you take LSD, you got holes in your... Oh, let's do that question. Anything you would like to say, Tufan? Anyone else? Go ahead.
Well, we are going to have great slides about the toroidal fields of the heart, of the human body. We will talk about Glenn Ryan's articles about that.
Great. So we're getting there. Good. Okay. So maybe you should then go ahead, because I know Tufan has a lot of slides. and it's
quite a bit of slides.
Last comment here was watch out for etheric hygiene. That's right. Astral hygiene is a very important point about not leaking this charged plasma. We'll talk more later. But please, Tufan, I think we should go. Go ahead, I think. Sure. Yes.
All right. Now, we will talk about golden ratio. And golden ratio, I would sum it up as a relationship between distances, between mass, between dimensions, between lengths, between time scales, between the units. It's a relationship between the units. And if we can go over the history of golden ratio, well, first of all, golden ratio is omnipresent in the universe. It has always been here. It will be here after us. And I strongly believe and suggest that it is present at all dimensions, even in the ones that we don't perceive. But we can still track the history by the help of written documents and the artifacts that survived. So we know that Egyptians have used the golden ratio in the design of the Great Pyramids. And also Sumerians have used the golden ratio in some of their tablets. We'll go over them shortly. Greeks have used the golden ratio in the design of the Parthenon. And then Plato, in his views on natural science and cosmology, presented in his Timaeus book, considered the golden section to be the most binding of all mathematical relationships and key to the physics of the cosmos. This is greatly important. I would advise everyone to read the Timaeus, the book of Plato. It's the most alchemical book that Plato has written. It delves into great detail about the Platonic solids and the creation of the universe. It's a great book, and it's a short one.
So we weren't the first to say that golden ratio is physics. Plato beat us to it.
Right. Euclid in Elements referred to dividing a line at the 0.618 point as dividing a line in the extreme and mean ratio. And this gave rise to the use of the term mean in the golden mean. He also linked it to the construction of a pentagram. And then Leonardo Fibonacci discovered the unusual properties of the numerical series that now bears his name, the famous Fibonacci sequence. And Leonardo da Vinci provided illustrations using the golden mean extensively for a dissertation published by Luca Poccioli in 1509 entitled The Divine Proportion. And the golden ratio became extremely famous during the Renaissance period. And then Johannes Kepler discovered of the elliptical nature of the orbits of the planets around the sun, also made mention of the divine proportion. So mathematically, if we have a 1 unit of length, and if we want to cut it at the golden section, we would not need to cut it from the 0.618 point, which is roughly slightly off the middle point. Now, this creates harmony because the smaller one to the bigger one, the ratio is 1.618, which is golden ratio. And the bigger one to the whole is also 1.618 golden ratio. So if you can get this ratio among the system, the smaller one to the bigger one, and then the bigger one to the whole, if the ratios are the same, then you technically have harmony. And golden ratio is the only ratio that allows this mathematical harmony. Now, you cannot accomplish this with any other number or any other ratio. This is the only ratio in the universe of mathematics that allows both adding and multiplying constructively, technically. We'll get to that in a second.
And we're going to see that that's a solution to the wave mechanics compression. Just your slide about Kepler, I really love Kepler because there he is saying golden ratio Platonic nestings is the key to gravity. And now that some of us can say, well, objects will fall to the ground, we can say that Kepler was precisely right. The literal cause of stable gravity is that nesting electrically. So we're going to prove Kepler was bang on.
Right. This is why understanding this principle of harmony, why golden ratio have this harmony and other ratios doesn't, is very crucial in understanding the mechanics of waves. If you want to understand sacred geometry, we have to understand why golden ratio is the only solution to harmony.
And therefore the solution to the wave mechanics of implosive compression, which is the solution to about everything.
We'll come to that. And then, as said, this is extensively used by the painters. The artists in the Renaissance area were obsessed with using sacred geometry and the golden mean, the divine proportion in their artworks. And so many of these paintings have golden proportions. The examples are endless. There are just a couple of them. You can also measure those with a phi ruler. Just place it on the painting, on the picture, and you will immediately see the harmonical relationships. And you can see John the Baptist is pointing at the exact golden ratio point. Now, does Leonardo da Vinci giving us a signal here? There are some other paintings as well. And then
Yes. Tufan didn't mention that if you would like a phi ruler, why, he just happened to have them handy.
right.
The golden ratio caliper.
I also found out that the capital, not only the capital of Turkey, but also the Çankaya district, which is one of the 911 districts in Turkey, which where the parliament sits, is like on this red dot here. the red dot is the Chankaya district, exactly sits on the golden ratio point. If you get the exact latitudes and longitudes and divide them into the exact golden ratio, you get these latitudes and longitudes. This is the exact golden ratio point. And we also see them in churches, in temples, and many of the medieval and older churches and temples, like almost without exception, all of them have sacred proportions. Now, this one is from Budapest, the Matthias Church. You can
And there's
see
the
that.
golden ratio calipers now.
Oh yeah, like those proportions are everywhere in this church and in all of them. Like they are really, there are so many of them. You can just make one lecture observing only one church, all the proportions, why they did it. And there are also great architects who delve into this and talk about, oh yeah, this was the ratio, the golden section ratio that I shipped to you, I think a couple of months ago, right?
These are from Tufan, everybody. They're fun.
All right. More details from the Matthias Church, Budapest. And you can see the sections are divided at the exact golden ratio proportions. This one is from Krakow, Saints Peter and Paul Church. Notice the foundational columns are exactly arranged with the multiples of golden ratio without exceptions, sorry. So this is the front side of the same Saints Peter and Paul Church. You can see the foundations, and also famous temple, Parthenon, and the temple of Apollo in Didyma in Turkey. They all have golden ratio proportions. And before going there, I'll go over a couple more slides.
I mean, the thing that's fun is we now know the reason for this, which obviously is charge implosion, and that creates the centripetal force that makes things sacred and alive. So.
Yes, I forgot a Turkish headline here. That's okay. It says Stonehenge and the optimization of sound waves. So they just created the same structure, the same geometry in a studio, a sound engineering studio, and they noticed that there was great acoustic, and those stones were specifically arranged to create that acoustic. And there is also golden ratio in the Stonehenge as well. And another very interesting study that I'm going to mention about, and so on the right here, you can see the Stradivarius 5 chambers, these are called. And well, a Stradivarius is one of the violins, violas, cellos, or other string instruments built by Antonio Stradivari during the 17th and 18th centuries. And on the left, you can see a violin exactly divided by golden sections, because Stradivarius was well known for using golden sections in the design of his violins. And the Stradivarius 5 chambers is the age-old practice of creating resonant chambers that suppress the formation of unwanted standing waves and reflection. Because sometimes you may have noticed when you walk into a room, a space, or a concert hall, or a nightclub, let's say, and let's say there's the DJ playing the music, and as you walk along the space, you will see specific frequencies accumulating. Let's say you go to the corner and you will hear the bass in a higher frequency. You come to the middle and you will sense it less. So these are because of the uneven distribution of standing waves. And the best rectangular concert halls use golden proportions in their dimensions, simply because standing wave reflection simply cannot be sustained when one of the 3 dimensions in a container is at or even near a golden ratio to another.
Because the dominant harmonic is replaced by an implosion harmonic. It's interesting, when I used to tune pipe organs, if the church had a notable resonant frequencies, it really messes up because one pipe is always going to be louder than the rest. So you need that implosion to equalize, which is obviously called harmonic inclusiveness, balanced.
Right. So I think this example is beautiful because it explains the function or the beautiful effect of golden ratio in sound systems, in sound waves. And there are different waves: sound waves, light waves, longitudinal waves, transverse waves. And they all have the same fundamental principle, actually. And this gives an example from the sound waves, but we can apply the same principles to all sorts of waves because the fundamental is the same. And this is why in temples and in other religious buildings, it can be a mosque, a church, or another one, they all have golden ratio because it also amplifies the intention. This is why the ancients use this ratio extensively, because the ritual or the intention that you give in such spaces are optimized by waves, by wave mechanics. And you can make it, as Dan Winter says, you can make a better phone call to your ancestors, probably. Fractal, phase conjugate, golden ratio, proportion. So this is why it's crucial to understand this basic principle, basic function of golden ratio at all wave systems.
Which is really harmonic inclusiveness perfected, fractality perfected. We could even mention about Stradivarius in terms of other ways in which the electrical nature that he was supposedly using sacred ground gemstones in the varnish, making it highly piezo. So now you've got implosive phonon, and the piezo pressure then creates implosive capacitance, precisely because the paint is also, the shellac is profoundly capacitive. And so that's really, and then later the red violin, it was actually, you know, the dying wife's blood, which is also piezo in the paint, recreating her emotions, also with implosive sound, triggering implosive electric, piezoelectrically.
Thank you. I will go a little faster now because we still have a lot of slides. Dan Winter also measured the difference of distribution of charge and isolation of charge, and maybe you can talk about this, Dan. You can, I'm sure you'll explain this much better than I do.
Briefly, what we did was we created a computer simulation where we took every possible ratio of adding and multiplying wavelengths, or heterodynes. And if you heterodyne a series of cascades and you use the octave, you literally, on the bottom right, you get maximum destructive wave interference. Whereas if you heterodyne, simply add and multiply waves in a computer synthesizer, and you use golden ratio, you get maximum constructive wave interference. It doesn't mean the octave is evil, but it does mean the octave can isolate charge by causing it to be frozen in place, which is why hex and cube stabilizes. Whereas the golden ratio, by maximizing constructive wave interference, then enables implosion, recursion, heterodyning, and ultimately enables compression. And then later, this was the early work we did with a mathematical simulation. Later in our final physics papers, we published the generalized wave equations to prove that golden ratio is the generalized solution to constructive wave interference in general. And that's when we knew we could prove that's the cause of gravity, because Einstein knew the solution to compression was the cause of gravity, but he didn't know what the wave mechanics of fractality was.
So both the phi and the octa ratios, there are basically functions of this reality. So because you cannot have one without the other, it's, as we went through the laws of the universe, it's like the yin and yang. So the nature uses both functions. It's just important for us to understand this so that we can better construct or build our environment with this understanding, so that we can have a bioactive field and we can have a better aura, a more hygienic environment.
Better implosion. The original website was fractalfield.com/mathematics of fusion, but now that's, of course, part of the physics at fractalfield.com/conjugate gravity.
Yeah, so we talked about the golden ratio, about the harmony, harmonious effect, harmonic inclusiveness. And now these are the exponents of golden ratio. Now, this is also very important to understand, because the exponents of golden ratio gives us both the arithmetic and the geometric mean. And as said before, this is the only ratio that can provide arithmetic and geometric mean together in the universe of mathematics. What arithmetic mean means, in the sequence, you sum up two numbers and you get the third one. 0.3 plus 0.618 roughly equals to 1. 1 plus 6.8 equals to 1.618, and so on. And the geometric mean is that you get any number in the sequence and multiply it with golden ratio, and you get the following number. It never changes. It can go until forever. That's what harmony is. That's what harmonic inclusiveness is. And this also brings us to constructive wave interference, because when the wave systems, they agree meeting at specific points, the graphic is symbolic, they create this constructive wave interference, and they become centripetal, and they create implosion.
Exactly. And that's a solution to gravity, actually. That's the point.
Right. This one is from our sacred geometry poster. This section on the right is the extended version of this middle phi rectangle. And this is why the pentagon and the star symbol has been one of the most sacred symbols in the ancient civilizations, because it gives the exact constructive wave interference formula. It contains itself. You can see the proportions are all related with the exponents of golden ratio. And as Dan says, phi is the only ratio which allows wavelengths to both add and multiply constructively, solution to gravity.
Tufan, I think it'd be fun to just do the one quick question here. It says, Dan, if one uses a ratio of 2 instead of 1.618, is result explosion instead of implosion, or some other type of action? That's an important question. Actually, you know, clearly golden ratio is implosion, centripetal force, but 2 or octaves is not explosion. It is rather freezing. So the reason the ice crystal is tetracube, which is hex, because the octave ratio prevents the charge from changing geometry from being distributed. So it is very good for stabilizing and terrible for imploding. If you want to stabilize any system, use tetracube octave. It is literally how to freeze something, how to stabilize, which is very good for certain functions. But if you want to implode something and therefore make it negentropic, then you must use golden ratio, because that will make it implosive and negentropic and alive and mindful potentially.
Thank you. And this is a perfect implosive geometry where you draw stars inside the stars. As said, the exponents of golden ratio are perfectly present in this specific geometry. And this one is also present in the nature. So this is another poster from geometricmodels.org. I'm going to zoom into the lower section here, which is the relationship between the Earth and the Venus. Now, as you can see here, this is the orbital relationship of Earth and Venus around the sun, and they create this beautiful rose, the Venus rose, in every 8 years. As Venus and Earth orbit the sun, they create this 5-petal flower pattern over an 8-year period. And on the left side, you can see a representation of this pattern, which clearly can bring gravity to the sun at the center.
This becomes very profound when we understand how Venus is supposedly the orbit inhabited by higher beings. If the orbit is fractal and conjugate, it becomes a plasma embedding place for advanced plasma entities. The morning star.
And this sacred proportion phi is present in everywhere in the solar system. This beautiful book is present at spirasolaris.ch.
I think it's .ca, sorry.
Sorry, CA, right.
Yes.
And it shows extensively the calculations of the orbital relationships of the planets through the Fibonacci sequence, and how he links it to golden ratio here, extensively detailed.
And the implication is this is how you stabilize gravity. That is the point. It's beautiful.
We have it in all our bodies, our biology, everywhere. We have it on our faces.
It is beauty because it's implosion. It's implosion because it's beauty.
Yes. We have it in the brainwaves. flamingmind.com, iThrive.com, from Dan Winter and Patrick Bott. As the brainwaves in those specific frequencies, beta, alpha, beta, delta, theta, when the peak points of those frequencies in each specific section get to golden ratio relation to each other, the person get closer to bliss and peace. And this is measured by the iThrive device, the application that you can find at flamingmind.com or iThrive.com.
Yeah, the iThrive measures heart rate variability, the heart harmonics, where you can teach empathy, compassion, breathing. But the Flame in Mind measures brainwaves, and that's me on the left. I can have really good bliss experiences with those 5 harmonics in golden ratio. But recently I've learned, because I didn't climb to the next ladder rung, which is gamma, 44 hertz, up a little higher there. Since I didn't make it to gamma, also then I'm not quite so good at lucid dreaming, and so I have some place to go in that ladder yet.
So they are basically everywhere in all systems of waves. Oh, sorry, this one. Yeah, here we go. And in the DNA as well. This is the extended section of the square. And you can see in whichever perspective you look at the DNA, you will see golden ratio. Now, this one is the cross section of the golden ratio. You can see. Okay, let's start with this one. This is the DNA spiral as a golden section, and this one, number 5, is perfect embedding of harmonics in DNA. Now, as DNA they braid inside each other, they create this beautiful frequency of envelopes, and we hypothesize that it is all braided in the sequence of golden ratio, as it is already present in all dimensions of the DNA. And this specific ratio enables the negentropic and phase conjugate properties of the DNA. Now, I cannot repeat this sentence again. Okay.
Well, that's the animations are all at goldenmean.info/DNA manifesto. But we do think that the recursive implosive braiding in DNA induced by bliss and love basically enables that implosion to spit out longitudinal, which is basically how you get a soul. So your access to bliss is modeled geometrically by understanding what DNA is doing, literally imploding.
So technically, the number of harmonics in your DNA fractal antenna ascend by golden ratio when the spin density braid implosion enables that compression to be implosive, negentropic, and centripetal, from Dan Winter.
Yeah, and you can measure when your heart coherence goes up, the density of braiding in DNA goes up, and that's literally your DNA imploding in response to bliss. And that compression event in your DNA is where your body builds that longitudinal coherence, and therefore literally what enables lucid dreaming, surviving death, and having a soul.
Yes, most probably many of you already watched this video. This is I can say my favorite. And if there are anyone out there who hasn't watched it, please go on to YouTube and click on The Purpose of DNA by Dan Winter. This is just beyond beautiful.
30 years ago, and I looked a little younger then. But I think there's several 100,000 views, actually.
Right. So we see golden ratio in quantum physics. While working on the Heisenberg's uncertainty principles, researchers have for the first time observed and measured the signatures of a nanoscale symmetry showing the same attributes as the golden ratio. And this also brought the Nobel Prize.
That E8 symmetry is essentially unpacked stellation of star mother kit and is in fact acknowledged to be based almost entirely on golden ratio. It's a supersymmetry.
And also we see it in nanotechnology because golden ratio is crucial in molecular biology as well. Researchers are working on ways to implement this understanding in molecular nanotechnology.
And Buckminster fullerene of carbon would be a good example.
This is a dodecahedron plankton in the form of a dodecahedron. This is one of the oldest planktons in the world, probably. Has been around for 66 million years and survived the KPG mass extinction that resulted in the demise of 76% of species with fossil record, including 90% of calcareous nanofossils. I'm going faster now. This is the golden ratio in hydrogen radii discovered by golden ratio. Diameter has proved that hydrogen radii are exact golden ratio phase conjugate multiples of Planck, fitting perfectly to the universal frequency caduceus, which is exactly golden ratio exponents of Planck length and time, origin of all biologic negentropy. And during one of our visits to Prague, we went to Zelena Hora, and this very much, and then I found this building plan of the structure, and it very much resembled the hydrogen formula of Dan Winter, because you can fit it on each other. And this is a decagon. It also has perfect geometry for perfect charge implosion, also holy grail of fusion implosion gravity making. Now we have to understand what Planck length is, because we use this a lot, and also in the universal caduceus, universal frequency caduceus. These are all the golden ratio exponents of Planck length. So Planck is the smallest scale that one can get. It's like the fabric of space and time. It's the smallest distance, smallest mass, or the smallest time. This is the name for the smallest scale. You can check it on Wikipedia as well. And
in other words, every wave physics has ever measured, Planck divides evenly. So it's the musical signature of the quantum foam.
Right. And if you take that basic scale and continue multiplying it with the golden ratio, you reach to very specific and spatial biologic mechanisms and heavenly bodies. Specifically, Dan Winter explored that the ADP, ATP, and the three exact hydrogen radii, as we went over, the photosynthesis frequencies, Schumann period, Mayer wavelength, low frequency HRV, Venus and Earth years, as we also saw them in our previous slides. The precision of the equinox and the galactic years perfectly sits on those golden ratio exponents of Planck length.
So this is the path out of negentropy. It's the way out of chaos. So this is the proof that the universe is not condemned to entropy. Your physics teacher was wrong. There's a way out of chaos. This is it.
Yes, so Planck is like the tuning fork of the universe. And if you can tune to it, then you're good.
You tune to it using golden ratio, and that the advanced physics, then we see that the reason for that is because at the Planck threshold, the transverse electromagnetic is converted to longitudinal, and that's the radio of DNA in the galaxy.
Yeah. So as Nikola Tesla suggested, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. This is what we also suggest. And so a wave in physics, a wave is an oscillation accompanied by a transfer of energy that travels through a medium. Imagine yourself throwing a stone to the water, and that creates these ripples and the waves, and you get that cross section, and you will find a sine wave on the surface. And there are two specific forces that I want to focus on now: the centrifugal and centripetal forces. Now, one of them tends to implode towards center, and the other one explodes. It's a centrifugal force. So these are two forces that are present in a toroidal field, which is a plasma field. And especially the implosive the quality of that force is observable in whirlpools and black holes as well.
Just to suggest a way to think about that, biology always struggled with the question, why every protein we ever saw that was alive, the helix went one way only. But if you know that the plus minus DC polarity of lightning, one is more centripetal than the other, now you know why one direction of the lightning, polar direction, being more centripetal, could drive the codons together instead of apart, imploding instead of exploding. So you see, connecting the idea of implosion versus explosion with plus and minus charge is profound. Actually, electronegativity, we think, is generally centripetal.
Yeah, so as said, you can see both qualities of those forces are present on a toroidal field. Now, we can divide the curvature on a toroidal field as positive and a negative. Now, the inner section of the torus donut is a negative curvature, and the outer part is a positive curvature. Now, especially the inner part of that torus on both sides, as we see in the picture here, is also called a catenoid. And this is extremely important to understand the physics that we are talking here, because in physics, the catenoid was used to describe the function of transduction in wormholes for energy, like higher dimensional energy, to influx into our 4D space-time with its unique topology. That's why it's very important to understand the catenoid.
The catenoid basically refers to the curvature that creates that vortex. And remember, it is conventional physics that everything is made of vortex in wormholes. That's old information. The new information is that the golden ratio is what enables that vortex to be centripetal because of the constructive adding and multiplying waves. And that's the cause of implosion and gravity and life and consciousness.
Yeah, basically, that geometry holds the specific path of charge flow on that topology, also known as non-destructive charge collapse.
Exactly. And all the physicists agree non-destructive charge collapse is the solution to basically everything, including the unified field. And it appears that all the psychologists agree that perfected charge collapse is the cause of consciousness. It's just that none of them seems to know what causes charge to collapse. And the answer is two words: golden ratio.
Right. So Earth's magnetic field, also known as the geomagnetic field, has a toroidal magnetic field extending from the Earth's interior out into space. And this magnetic field is not only a toroid, but it's a twistor, where toroidal fields are recursively created within each other and became scale invariant, as we have seen in this research paper that we went over, how they were linking the consciousness in the universe are all linked, entangled to each other like a toroidal domain donut.
Yes, and in fact, we're saying that entanglement perfected is the problem golden ratio phase conjugation solves. Physics knows that entanglement is what creates action at a distance. Now we know that golden ratio enables the longitudinal, which is the action at a distance solution. And that implosion is charge collapse.
Yes, and this is also another reference to this previous research paper, that the the electromagnetic activity of the sun is directly related with the brain field. And this is also called magnetoreception. And this is another link to this entanglement, perfect embedding of consciousness.
And we know that birds do it, but it turns out humans can too.
And I would like to mention about Glenn Ryan here, because he has this beautiful article called Biological Effects of Quantum Fields and Their Role in the Natural Healing Process, 1998. So Glenn simply explains the toroidal fields in relation to biofields around our bodies, free energy devices, and healing processes. In a nutshell, Ryan used his experimental evidence as the basis for a model which introduces the concept of a biofield composed of at least 3 layers comprising of force fields, potential fields, and quantum fields embedded within one another like a twistor. And the model further proposes that, this is very important, the healing information originates from a higher dimensional source and is transformed into biologically usable electromagnetic energy as it propagates through the layers of the biofields, through the twistor. And also, twistors or torus magnetic fields are being emitted by the heart. Dan Winter, who is credited in the literature for inventing the word heart coherence, emphasizes that compression is learned when emotional pictures inside our hearts become so self-similar or fractal that they become a fractal attractor, sucking the outside in, therefore creating attraction towards others who have similar emotions in their hearts. And the recursive turning inside out becomes the implosion, which is the electrical rush associated with feeling and the love of attraction. Go ahead, Dan.
Which is compassion. That's a beautiful thing. Thank you for repeating. That's gorgeous. And just to say, if you make a picture inside yourself of what someone else might be feeling about outside yourself, if the picture you made inside is self-similar to their feelings outside, that feeling implodes, and I would turn myself inside out for you, darling. That's the physics of compassion. And the power spectrum of the EKG, realheartcoherence.com, proves how that works.
Yes. And the electrical model of the heart's increasingly harmonic inclusive fractality makes perfect compression and makes perfect compassion as electrically identical, self-similar.
You know, in the biophysics of the heart literature, the When Time Breaks Down, the famous book, depicts the origin of the heart's voltage with exactly similar pictures. It just turns out that that's measurable in the EKG, meaning you can actually teach compassion by measuring the EKG become coherent between 2 people. It's beautiful, realheartcoherence.com.
Right. And this gives new insight into why the healthy heart is a fractal heart.
Which is not a new idea. That was Harry Goldberger, actually.
Right. Now, this is self-re-entry in space and time. It basically shows the 3-dimensional axis and distribution. And if you notice the spiral on a donut, you will see that it will rotate around the toroidal field 3 times and come back to its starting point. So you can imagine this like consciousness or perception going over the toroidal field and coming back to its starting point and remembering or experiencing itself. This is how consciousness or perception happens at all scales in the universe. And these are the 3 axes of rotational spin for self-sustaining plasma intelligence: gravity, perception, consciousness. Now, our point is the reason why plasma fields chose to manifest themselves in this profound toroidal form is because they had to find a self-sustaining, self-organizing recursive geometry to optimize their survival energy. And we know from hydrodynamics that the 3 axes of rotational spin allows the only self-sustaining shape. This is why it's important to understand those 3 axes and how it helps the toroidal field or the toroidal spiral shapes.
You've basically got 3 axes of spin superposed, and the torus is the only way to do that. Another way of saying that if you're a smoker, the only thing you can make is smoke rings. But the point would be made is that's self-organizing golden spiral on the torus. If you see the shadows of that indexed by tetra is Hebrew and Sanskrit. That's what that at that link, goldenmean.info/DNA ring, because non-destructive self-reentry is the origin of not just mass, but it's the origin of consciousness.
Right. So this is the map of the local void in the Milky Way. And sorry, I just applied this toroidal field in the local void and applied this toroidal plasma intelligence there, because we know that the plasma beings in larger scales, they also have this toroidal field.
And, you know, as we get into more advanced galactic history, we realize the tetracubic trapezium in Orion is one of the most powerful stargates in our galaxy. The war is over the Stargate, actually. And that's why there's dozens, if not hundreds, of star maps of Orion on the Earth, because everyone wants access to the door out of the kindergarten.
Right. And now, if you can imagine a tornado like a vortex field, like this whirlpool, you can perfectly fit it on an implosive donut, right, at the center here. And originally, the golden spiral wrapped torus symmetry indexing field effect created the sacred alphabets. And we'll see a couple more slides about this.
So if you index that spiral on the torus by the tetracube in that picture, you get Hebrew and Sanskrit. And the superset of that is hypercube or dodecacosa, which is a Feynman-Enochian. And interestingly, if you index toroidal tilts by tetracube, you get the SP pi suborbitals. And if you do the DF, you have dodecacosa. So effectively, if you know how to tilt the donut by tetracube and then dodecacosa, you got the atomic table done.
So basically, you take the spiral on a donut, like take it out and cut it from half, like this, okay? We cut it from the cross section and then take the spiral out. And once you start observing that spiral in different perspectives, you will see different flame letters of the sacred alphabet. And in Hebrew alphabet, we have spiral on a donut angled into compression, indexed by the spin of the tetrahedron here, the 7-axis tetracube perspective. And it may be difficult for some to visualize the 7 axes of the tetra compression. And I would like to give some insight into how to visualize the 7 axes of charge symmetry, because I was having problems visualizing that until I figured how to do that. So this is our vector flexor. So we get this to the tetra perspective and we get the symmetry, right? So I will try to explain this by using this tetrahedron, and I will use the vertices and the edges of this tetrahedron. And one small note before doing that. Now, the 7 axes, they all share the same gravity point at the center of the tetrahedron, right? At the exact center. So they all go through the center. So this is the commonality that they have. And I'm going to explain 2 systems, both having different axes. So in the first system, I will explain the 4 axes. In the second system, I will explain the 3 axes, and then we will combine that together. And if you can combine those 2, maybe you can get some psychokinesis, or I don't know. What do you say, Dan?
Well, the 7arrows.net has those animations. You can see the 7 spins, the tetra spinning on 7 axes at once. But that is useful, Tufan, by all means. So you got 4 arrows going through each one through each vertex, and then you got 3 arrows going through edge center pairs.
Exactly. So, okay, in the first system, we have 4 axes, and those 4 axes are starting from each vertex, going through the center, and goes through the opposing center of the face, right? So it starts from the vertex, goes through the center, comes out from the center of the opposing face. So because we have 4 vortices, we have 4 axes. Now, in the second system, we connect the edges, all right? Now we have 6 edges, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And every 2 edges opposing each other share 1 x. We are starting from the center of the edge and continue going through the center and come out from the center of the other edge. So every 2 edges has 1 x, 6 edges have 3 axes. Now in the second system, we have 3 edges, 3 axes. So if we combine those systems, 4 axes and 3 axes, and we have the perfect 7 axes of charge symmetry map. This is how you can visualize this.
And you can actually see it spinning on 7 axes all at once at 7arrows.net.
Yeah, and simply focusing on a Hebrew letter in your brain will cause the plasma donuts, which is your optical cortex, to be tilted to that phase angle, and you blow that donut in your brain and send that smoke ring at that phase angle, that vortex, and nest them properly.
And then you're starting on your atomic table.
Okay, where are we? We did this.
Yeah, you had several pictures from that already. So
yeah, so these were the pictures that I used from, this is from the Torus poster that you can find at geometricmodels.org. Again, going over the exponents of golden ratio, very important to understand really what phase conjugation is, because if you can get waves agree to meet with each other at the exact golden ratio cross sections every time in a cross section view, as we saw on the Venus rose, then you get this perfect wave collapse. And in optic physics, they did this experiment. They focused lasers to each other at a specific phase conjugate material. What happened was those lasers at center, they tend to organize themselves, become centripetal and negentropic. And this is when the time reversal, they proved time reversal first time in history, basically. So the physics of phase conjugation is the conjugation of waves in a discipline.
And they called it time reversal, but it was actually mostly negentropy, that the wave goes backwards in terms of the sequence, so it goes back to its origin. So it's an example of negentropy.
Where we get the pine cones kissing noses from, right?
Beautiful pictures, Tufan. Good work.
This is from one of the older ones. So also charge distribution efficiency is very much related to the understanding of how waves agree in a discipline. They use the pine cone. We also related with the pineal gland, because you know, the universe uses the Fibonacci sequence to perfect itself to golden ratio, because golden ratio is not an even number. The nature works with even numbers. So the nature found its way to perfect itself through the Fibonacci sequence. And if you can see the spirals on the pine cone, the spirals to one direction goes like 13 times and 8 times to the other direction, all within the Fibonacci sequence. So the universe has optimized its mathematics to connect to golden ratio. And this is where charge distribution efficiency comes from.
And that is the most profound thing if you begin to meditate on it, that, you know, it's well known that at the center of the phase conjugate mirror, where the lasers kiss noses, you have what's called a super dielectric barium strontium titanate, which is the high dielectric means charge distribution efficient. So that's where the lines can converge efficiently. But then when you begin to think that our words for heaven, plains of Sharon, et cetera, which is actually the valence of unpacked gold, monoatomic gold, is our name for heaven, Champs-Élysées. Heaven is also the place of charge distribution efficiency, literally where ancestral memory can circulate. So we begin with the pure physics of where implosion is enabled by charge efficiency. And then we come to very, very deep spiritual concepts. And even in between, we come to architecture is only biologic if it's high dielectric. Biological materials enable architecture to breathe life because of charge distribution efficiency.
Yeah. So we have spirals everywhere in the universe. The universe is composed of spirals. That's one of the functions of the universal charge. And the Discover magazine asks, why is our universe filled with spirals? The obvious answer is because the qualities of the universal energy are, as Dan Winter beautifully summed up, it's compressible, behaves like a fluid, stores inertia when it rotates, and in certain geometries, like fractal conjugate, it appears to self-organize and become intelligent and alive. And more details on that at Dan Winter's latest book, Fractal Conjugate Space and Time, Cause of Negentropy, Gravity, and Perception.
And the physics there is actually so simple to understand that at the implosion point, it makes a connection to what's called the longitudinal array, the compression, the fractal star mother kit shape of the Earth grid. And that array is the information distribution of collective unconscious, et cetera, and gravity. And so that intelligence is because you've connected the DNA radio at the implosion point to that grid, that array.
Go ahead.
I wonder if you want to, we should do a few of these questions, or what do you think,
Sure.
Tufan? Yeah,
Sure. I have a couple more slides, but we can take questions anytime you want.
well, there was one. Is two pine cones kissing the same as the center of the torus? Justin said, and essentially, yes, I would say yes. Eric said, Tufan is still not clear on the 7 axes of the tetracube. Actually, remember, the 7 arrows idea starts with just one tetra. So if you have one tetra in your hand, exactly as Tufan did, 4 arrows, 1 through each vertex, and 3 arrows, which are the 3 opposite pairs. So that's 7 arrows. Yeah. Now you can see that animated beautifully at 7arrows.net, really, SEVEN. So it really that is answered.
I would advise the person who asked the question to meditate on the geometry of the tetrahedron a little more. Just notice on the faces, vertices, edges, the numbers that they have, and I'm sure they will link, if they can focus on the numbers they have, the arrangement on the toroidal around the tetra topology. I'm sure they will figure it out.
You can just see the way
you can always listen to this video once again.
The way Tufan was holding that tetra just now, you were seeing a cubic view, so you were seeing the edge center pairs. So it's obvious that you got an axis that goes through the 4 vertex. That's 4 arrows. But the other 3 are edge center pairs. And Tufan is holding it perfectly right now for the camera. So you're seeing a symmetry axis right through the opposite edge center pairs. So there's 3 arrows just like that. So that's 4 arrows plus 3 arrows. That's 7 arrows. That's the most profound book in Indian literature called 7 Arrows. And that's the 7 arrows of the heart and origin of Hebrew and all this stuff about the 7 spins. It starts there. So maybe, yes, go ahead. Yes, I think.
A couple of years ago, I think that was 2 years ago, an actual picture of an exoplanet being born around the young star AB Aurigae. And this could be the first direct evidence of early planet formation in a young stellar disk, according to researchers. And this very much reminds us Dan Winter's definition of the qualities of the universal energy. In certain geometries, it appears to self-organize and become intelligent and alive, like plasma beings.
Tufan, the one question here, Justin said, what exactly is the longitudinal array? Does this exist in the typical concept of space and time? So it was Bearden who first proved that a longitudinal wave, which is basically a compressional wave, EMF, is the stuff of gravity waves. And so everyone agrees the Earth grid's dodecacosa and the universe is dodecacosa. What they don't know is why. And it's because those are the enabled compression points where the transverse up and down electromagnetic exchanges inertia with the more far-reaching compressional nodes of the longitudinal array. So the longitudinal wave physics is key to not just all action at a distance and gravity waves, but every spiritual story as well, and how you lucid dream and die well. So maybe we'll do another conversation another time about longitudinal wave physics, but you could read more at fractalfield.com/conjugate mind. But maybe you should continue with your pictures here because it's getting late, Tufan, please. Thank you.
Talking about the spirals, it's very instructive to understand the catanoid as we went over to explain some of the mysteries of water when it comes to changing qualities in certain conditions. And this subject brings us to a dream portrayed by the famous Victor Schauberger, a hero of implosion science and a pioneer in the quantum physical study of nature's subtle energies. Now, Schauberger successfully demonstrated how to purify water naturally and harness its colossal power by developing powerful machines, as you can see on the top left, on implosion technology with phase conjugate geometry. Basically, he was generating piezoelectric power electric power from his piezo mineral doped water vortex at the point where it spontaneously got colder, while reminding the vortex being a catanoid form with the function of transduction of higher states of energy. It is very rewarding to think of the implosion water technology as means of altering qualities through the centripetal negentropic charge implosion, also explained at fractalfield.com, called plasma.
And you can see that if that water vortex is piezo, what's happening, and we now learned recently that the angle of the cone of the perfect water for 76 degrees, a pyramid angle. Actually, what's happening is non-destructive charge collapse enables that inertia to be sucked down through the center, tuned to Planck, and that implosive suction way out through center is how that charge collapse enabled made that vortex spontaneously get colder, called negentropy. And for that reason, and just at that moment when it started getting colder, it began making voltage from gravity, and it became a propulsion device.
Moreover, what Schauberger did with intuition, Dan Winter did by equation, the precise geometry behind the hydrogen system by applying golden ratio to the physics of water, creating life-affirming water. So this exact golden ratio principle, spirals, are exactly applied in this technology here, and the exact geometrical principle with golden ratio perfected charge compression is applied in the water systems available at the implorer.com, geometricmodels.org, and you can clearly see the significant difference between the growth rate of the grains here.
Basically, what happens if that water vortex is piezo, that means if there's some rock powder, as Schauberger did and biodynamics does, then the vortex is piezoelectric, and that means you have charge implosion at the center of the water implosion. And that's what enables the hypersolubility and the growth effect. And hydration is everything for healing.
Okay, I'm now going very fast. So we talked about implosive charge collapse, and this is how we explain the famous formula of Dan's. This brings us to a fractal field based on golden ratio. Breeds charge becomes a bioactive field. It's a field that we can grow our auras. And so golden ratio is very important, but the more important thing, if you can tune it to the Planck, then that's the miracle. So we see this in some specific artifacts. This is the Sumerian tablet that is exactly tuned to Planck. So it doesn't only have the ratio, it also has the tuning to exactly Planck. And you can see the measurements here. There is 1 centimeter difference, and I account that for the depreciation of the tablets over time. And another one from Hagia Sophia in Istanbul. This is the section where coronation was done in Hagia Sophia. And I have noticed that the diameters of the circles, well, they all change from one another, but there are some how do you say it in English? I forgot the word. Distances that are I'll say it when it comes to my mind, but you can see the connection of those distances to Planck length times golden ratio exponents.
So they have both the scale and the ratio. They fit the Planck scaling embeddability. So they're literally charge implosion. That was a great discovery, Tufan. Good work.
Thank you. So yeah, dominant was the word that I forgot. So these were the dominant diameters in this geometry. And this is how they were embedding the land, embedding the surrounding the kings during the coronation, basically.
So when we discovered that the British foot actually fit Planck times golden ratio, we discovered the key to all sacred dimension is charge collapse.
Right. And charge compression in 2D, we see in cymatics, a very useful example, and 3D in implosion, especially in Platonic solids, and in the chemist moon's model, the chemist moon model of the nucleus, we see a nesting of the 4 of the 5 Platonic solids, similar to that conceived by Johannes Kepler to describe the solar system. And the idea is, this is another one so I'm going to focus on this section here, and we can see the progression of Platonic solids here. And I would like you to focus on the vortex geometries here, and you will see that they represent the implosion geometry of each Platonic solid. This is how chemist Moon applied this understanding to the atomic table. And you can see in this atomic table, the nucleus has the geometries consisting of Platonic solids here, as you can see.
So your chemistry teacher should have taught you the electron shells using the Star Mother kit, the platonics, because that's literally how the vortexes arrange themselves to be the SPDF subshells. And that symmetry is exactly then how the nuclear hadrons are arranged. It's gorgeous.
Right.
So all at goldenmean.info/creation.
What do you think, Dan? Shall I continue, or would you like to take some questions?
Oh, why don't you just do a quick review of the end, and then we'll finish with
Sure.
questions. Yeah.
All right. So the same understanding of Platonic solid charge compression is available in the quasi-crystal structures. Now, this is the discovery of the first quasi-crystal, brought the Nobel Prize in 2011. And the right picture is the potential energy surface for silver depositing on an aluminum palladium manganese, a quasi-crystal surface, basically. And this one is the electron diffraction pattern of an icosahedral quasi-crystal. And we can relate those electron diffraction patterns with different Platonic solid implosive geometries here. We can play with them. I'm just going fast now. And this is also extensively elaborated in the Islamic architecture. And the last section of the presentation is about having the shifting the 32 degrees. So you know, this discussion came out from the Flower of Life meditation, basically taught by Drumolo, and it's clear that the 32-degree tilt angle of the head is crucial for not attracting the parasites, and how we do that is essential. And I want to give an example on how we can demonstrate this or understand this by using the Star Mother kit. So you see 2 Star Mother kit geometries here. It's actually, they are different perspectives of the same Star Mother kit. Okay, these are same geometry, same star mother kit, but different perspectives, as you can see here. Now you can see the one on the right side. And when I do like this, or like this, you will see it as in the left side. Now, if you take this and shift it like this exact change will bring you from octave frequency to golden ratio frequency. This is how you can see this. And you can see the axis of the distribution here. On the right, you see the golden ratio symmetry axis of a decagon. And on the left, it's an octave frequency distribution. So shifting this 32 degrees basically shifts the geometry from octave ratio to golden ratio. And that's how you do that in your mind by doing the flower of life meditation. This is where it's coming from. And most of the geometries that we used are, the geometric tools are all available at geometricmodels.com, geometricmodels.org. And thank you all for listening.
It's literally the angle you tilt a cube at up 32 degrees and rotate and blink 5 times, and you have pentodeca. And that is the chin angle of the Sphinx, because that's the angle when you have visualized the tetracube, then you do that tilt and the cube embeds in the dodec, and you go from octave to golden ratio, and that is the bliss moment. And that's the moment when you go from pent to hex, which is the secret last step of the famous Flower of Life meditation. Thank you so much, Tufan. That was great. And I also think it was a wonderfully gentle and pictorial, and it's lovely to hear these ideas coming from someone else besides myself. It was great. Tufan has done his homework. It was fabulous. Let's just go through and see if we've missed any particularly important questions here. How does the work at CERN relate to this work? Well, you know, we think that the idea of fusion will be enabled when physicists understand how the longitudinal array creates ability to contain heat at a distance with a longitudinal array, which is the physics of all action at a distance, actually. They call it embedding. We know that conjugation is the perfect form of embedding, but that's a bit more advanced, and we're going to go into that more in my next talk on the more advanced sacred geometry. Let's see. Why spiral galaxies are not toroidal, and solar systems for that matter, being the physical matter distribution in them. Well, we could say, first of all, golden spiral wave mechanics describe planetary systems beautifully. The golden spiral is the dominant ratio in almost all planetary orbital mechanics, especially in the solar system. Remember, most planetary orbital mechanics are planar inherently. So it begins with spiral on a plane, like most solar systems are essentially planar. However, on an interstellar, literally a galactic or universal scale, now they have agreed that when the new scientists said the universe is fractal, the other magazine said the universe is dodecahedral because the arrangement of masses in the universe is proven to be dodecahedral, which is to say golden ratio in 3D, which is how we stabilize gravity. So understanding implosion is key to all of this.
And if I may add, we can also visualize the galaxy geometries between two toroidal forms like this. You can put this galaxy spiral on top of one torus and put another one on it. So that will make a double torus, one above the galaxy, the other one below the galaxy.
Nice. And the double torus is being used by others like Nassim as well. Chris said, thank you so much, Dan, Tufan, everyone present in the space. So grateful to receive this information, be present here. Thank you to all you beautiful souls. Really, that was a great visual. I think it's getting late, so I think we've done pretty well here, guys. I think we need to thank Tufan for doing very careful homework and for being a spokesman for the fractal field movement. Again, Tufan Guven's project is at geometricmodels.org, and he's reachable there also with all the wonderful teaching tools. We're going to be doing some more of the advanced physics on this in my next course, which is a couple weeks down the road. So check the schedule at fractalu.com/courses for the upcoming courses. So I think, Tufan, you're a hero. This is going to reach the world. Let's have this go viral.
Thank you all for watching, for being here.
And remember, to be a shareable wave, you must be compressible. And if you are compressible, it means that you will have access to bliss and you will lucid dream and take memory through death. And that's implosion. That's the fringe benefit. Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much, Tufan. Thank you for coming. Blessings, blessings. I
Thank
think
you.
we're tired. We'll do more tech questions next time.
Sure.
Oh, pardon? What? Oh, can you say if Discord was fixed? Just as we leave, the Discord link is now fixed. Yes, the conversation is up. Thank you. Blessings. Bye, everybody. Talk soon. See you
Bye.
next week. And look for this video on our YouTube channel.
Right. Next week, we are going to have fractal phase conjugation, deeper physics of gravity, vacuum energy, electrical physics of negentropy, life force, consciousness, and rejuvenation by Dan Winter.
Yeah, so we go into some of the advanced of what we just started at. There's a perfect introduction for next week. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Blessings.